we found that even with a very small budget, I was getting maybe 4 or 5 leads a month with basically no spend. This is when we were just getting started. Over time, we kind of learned the ins and outs of how to game that algorithm to a degree and optimize our spend. And now we're generating between 40 and 50 leads a month and growing. It's a very good channel for us, one of our major channels for acquiring users.
I'm excited to get into this. As nerdy as this topic is, it is, I think, a really intriguing one, and one that a lot of people, most people don't know much about. Like, we hear this term Capterra, but it's like, what is that site and why should I care? And that's why you're here today.
Right. So let me start with a little bit of an introduction. I'm Eran. I'm the founder of GymDesk. We provide online management software for gyms and other fitness and wellness businesses. I got to know Capterra a little bit as I was starting out. My initial inclination is to start with SEO and try to get some organic traffic. I didn't have a lot of money to spend. Bootstrap, no funding. And Capterra always showed up in the top results for many of our best queries. So I created a listing. And once you create a listing and you're ready to publish, it's when you realize that Capterra, though appearing to be a comparison website on the outside, is actually a pay-per-click ad network. You bid to appear in the results for a specific category. You can show up on multiple categories, but you're competing against other brands that are bidding against you to show up in the results. Their whole presentation is that of a software comparison website where your users review you, and other users can use that as information to pick a tool. But in reality, while the reviews do play a small part, what they do is they capture your reviews and then they make you pay to show them to potential customers. Capterra is actually a network of free websites. And it's something that's also not obvious when you first run into it. Capterra, GetApp, and Software Advice. So on the surface, it looks like separate websites, but once you sign up for Capterra and you set up your profile, you see that you can actually set up your profile on free websites from the same interface. All free websites are owned by Gartner. I believe they also do a lot of analytics and reporting. And you basically manage it like you would Google Ads. You have listings, you have bids, categories, different target URLs to landing pages. They have a lot of resources to help you set up landing pages. They have a lot of data on converting landing pages. And it's basically an ad network that, in my opinion, is preferable to Google Ads for most SaaS products. The best way to see if Capterra might be a good fit for your business is just to go and search for best XYZ category that your business is in, software. Most of the times, you'll find one of those free websites ranking in the top free search results. And in that case, you should definitely be creating a listing and bidding on some level. When I just started, I did not have any budget for AdWords. But the bids that you can put on Capterra in many of the, I'm sure there's some categories that are extremely competitive, but even in our category where there's some very major players, even if you bid a small amount, you're able to get some clicks, and those are going to be high quality clicks, way higher quality than AdWords in general, because they're coming through a comparison website. And we're going to get into this a little bit further down this talk, but they have a ranking algorithm that is a bit wonky. It's influenced by your bid, it's influenced by your ratings, and then it's influenced by a bunch of unknown factors, a little bit like search results. But it means that even with a low bid, you're able to get traffic that you would not normally think so. They would tell you with your bid, you might be shown in the 25th spot. But in reality, you look at your analytics and you're getting an average position of 11. Nobody knows. Their algorithm can't predict where you're going to show up. And we found that even with a very small budget, I was getting maybe 4 or 5 leads a month with basically no spend. This is when we were just getting started. Over time, we kind of learned the ins and outs of how to game that algorithm to a degree and optimize our spend. And now we're generating between 40 and 50 leads a month and growing. It's a very good channel for us, one of our major channels for acquiring users. Ideally, we would love to beat them in the search results, but a lot of big players have tried, and it's very difficult. They're very entrenched. They have a lot of SEO going on, and sometimes you have to take the necessary evil and just pay for that traffic. But I believe that once you get over that hurdle, it's an excellent channel for most SaaS companies.
That's great. So you touched on several things there. I think one we should circle back on now is budget. You talked about having a relatively small budget, and you said relatively inexpensive clicks. Put some numbers to those, and you don't necessarily have to talk about exactly what you did, but like give folks an idea of what type of budget they should think about.
Right. So I'm going to compare it a little bit to AdWords. With AdWords, especially for SaaS-related keywords, the main problem that you're going to run into initially is volume. The really targeted keywords, very low volume. Then when you start to expand your keywords to less targeted stuff, you get very low quality clicks. Now with Capterra, the clicks are usually very high quality. They're already filtered through search results because they made it to Capterra through some kind of intent-related keyword. And then they already did some comparison shopping. So by the time they reach you, unless you're like number 1 or number 2 on the list, they already evaluated multiple solutions and probably did not make up their mind yet. So you're in a really good position. You don't have to introduce what you do. You just have to have a product that is better than what they've seen so far. That's also difficult, but much less difficult than starting the whole process from scratch. So we were spending, I think, $50 to $100 a month.
Jeez,
and getting 4, 5, 6 super qualified leads. And that's basically was our main acquisition channel for years. When we were very small, almost no SEO traffic is coming in. But Capterra, even before you have any SEO, any sales channels, any referrals, partnerships, all that stuff, Capterra will send you leads. It's very simple. You pay even very little amounts and you get leads. You need validation for your new product. You have a very early stage product right now. You can get those leads and they're looking for a product like yours. If you pick the right categories, you get very relevant leads.
And when I think of Google pay-per-click, obviously cost really depends, but I've heard folks saying, were they in the help desk space? I don't know. It was some SaaS that most of us would use. And they were saying clicks were it's like $25 a click or $30 a click. And Google is, like you and I both know, the quality's fine, but like you're not going to convert that many of those. So, and other spaces, I don't know if gym software is what, $5 a click, $10 a click, whatever it is, like compare that to.
Yeah, it can get up there for sure. Even in our space, bidding on Google and even on Capterra, the top places on Capterra, they're $30+ a click. But I found from my experience, it's actually not beneficial to be in the top spots on a comparison website. When we tried to increase the bids as we had more budget to spend, our position increased, but our conversion rate decreased. So in the end, we were paying more and getting less from it. So there's a very fine balance to strike there.
That's interesting. I'm pulling up the slide so people can see kind of what it looks like. This is what a results page is, like a SERP page, right? A search engine result page. But here it's for help desk software.
When we just started out, we were paying really ridiculous amounts, like $2 a click, maybe even less sometimes. Our average was around $2 a click. we would get maybe 50 clicks a month and convert about 10% of it.
Jeez.
Yeah, this is one
That's
of the
crazy.
key factors here, because the quality of the leads is so high and they're providing support. We didn't have an amazing landing page. We just followed their best practices. We were getting around 10% conversion rate on our landing page from Capterra leads. That's what makes it so budget efficient.
So Eran, we've already touched on a few things. You've talked about Capterra and the sister sites. I think you've done a pretty good job talking about why Capterra is so beneficial, and a bit about budget, although I think I want to revisit that. I'm going to head back to that slide and we can talk a little more. And then we'll talk about, I think, listing optimization and probably getting reviews, actually, which I don't have a slide for, but we can still talk through. I think that's going to be really interesting.
We can talk a little bit about our current budget. Obviously, that's as increased significantly over the years.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because you were talking $2-ish a click, 50 clicks, $50 to $100 a month you were spending, but like, how have you ramped that up?
Yeah. So at this point, we're spending on most categories between $6 and $7 a click. Some categories that are less competitive, maybe $5 a click. And it gives us an average position about 6.5 to 7 on the results page, which I believe is maybe the ideal position to be in. First of all, they have several features that you only show up for if you're in the top 10 for a specific category. So that's already, it puts you on additional landing pages that they generate aside from the main category pages. At position 6, 7, they already gone through the major players that are willing to pay the $30 per click that we're not yet willing to compete with. And they're pretty well educated at that point. You can still get quality clicks at position 14, 15, but you're basically left with the people that eliminated 15 other companies, right? Which can be good or bad, but you're leaving a lot of your audience off. 6, 7, a lot of people are still there. They get to the search results and they scroll a little bit. They don't just click the first one and that's it, right? That the structure of the website kind of encourages you to look at more than one solution. So yeah, right now we're paying between $6 and $7 a click, depending on the category. We have been doing a lot of work on the optimization of the landing page and the listing page. There's a lot of interconnected factors there. The way that you present yourself on the category could influence the quality of the lead. When you add more and more categories, we initially started on just one category. At that time, we were servicing only martial arts schools. So we were on the martial arts category. But as we rebranded to GymDesk and now serving all kinds of fitness and wellness businesses, that opened up a bunch of new categories for us. So that's one way to scale, just adding additional categories. But eventually run into the problem that some of those categories might be relevant for you, but they're also relevant for products that are not exactly what you're doing. And then you might be paying for clicks on people that were looking for something else. So there's another kind of balancing act, and that can be influenced by the copy you put on the listing page. There's a bunch of different things you can do there. Right now, we actually have a contractor that specializes in dealing with Capterra listings. And that's been extremely beneficial. Every week, she reviews our performance. She creates action plans, writes copy for landing pages, updates the listings, updates the bids. And through that kind of iterative process, we've been able to optimize the budget and spend to the point where everything is now very cost efficient.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that there were Capterra consultants, but it
was
hadn't
actually
occurred
pretty
to me.
hard to find, but
I bet.
Yeah,
I don't think there are that many.
Yeah,
but
not that many.
That's good. And you're at the space now. When you're first starting out, you kind of got to figure it out yourself because you wouldn't have budget for that. But now that you're at this point and it's such a big channel,
yep,
makes sense. And so, is there anything before we move off of this listing page? You've talked about listing page and landing page, and this is the listing page. We'll look at your landing page in a minute, and you can give some thoughts about how you've optimized it. But on this listing page, What are some things you mess with? Like what do you have control over that makes any type of difference?
So obviously the title and the description here, very important. It's basically the same as search result pages, SERPs. You have to optimize the description there. It's the first thing people look at. Your logo obviously needs to be eye-catching. And then there's the element that's the most difficult to achieve, and that's the rating that you see there. The rating and number of reviews, extremely important factors in people deciding to check you out. And this is one of the struggles you'll run into as you're starting out and you have no reviews. You'll struggle to get clicks, but we focused a lot on encouraging reviews on Capterra. We have an email funnel that starts reaching out now a couple of months after the user has upgraded to a paid plan. We assume by that point, if they didn't churn out, they like our product. We ask them for their opinion, and if they're willing to leave a review, it's completely automated, and we get a steady stream of reviews as a result. Right now, we have the highest average rating on Capterra, even without personally asking for reviews. Recently, we started doing that as well. Another tactic I learned from one of the Tiny Seed founders. Whenever we have a really good customer service experience, I ask my customer service people to ask nicely for a review on Capterra, and people oblige. So this is one of the main areas that you'll struggle with initially, but very important to start getting those reviews. Once you have 10 or so reviews, it starts looking pretty good. Hopefully you got mostly 5-star reviews, and you can start competing on the results page. Aside from that, the assets that you add, obviously very important. We recently redesigned all of our assets for Capterra. We used to have just regular screenshots of our product, but now it's laid out in a very specific way. We saw some of our competitors listing. So we looked at some of our competitors. This is what my Capterra contractor is doing. She saw a few that had really good layouts. It's organized in a way that is not only showcasing the product, but also the brand, and in a very professional looking way. When you have a good looking product, the initial inclination just show the product, but also adding some wrapping to it really makes it stand out. Yeah, so if you click on any of those slides, you see what I mean. We add some copy on the screenshot. We do some layouting with the Mac, with the iPhone, and there's different approaches to do that. So that's the kind of stuff you can really optimize if you have a good designer or access to good designers. Then if you have good performance, so your conversion rate on the landing page is good, and Capterra knows because you installed their tracking pixel, you'll start getting those badges that you also see on our listing here. Emergent favorite, category winner. There's a bunch of different badges that you can acquire, and they have landing pages where they show all the emergent favorites, and they have landing pages where they show upcoming companies. You know, they see the velocity of the reviews you're getting, and all 5-star reviews, they start featuring you there. So stuff like that can really help you get additional traffic in addition to what's showing on the main listing page.
Got it. So there's several ways. So it's reviews, it's your assets. How did you say you get the badges again? Is it when you have good conversions? Do they add them automatically?
It's multiple factors. So yeah, if you have good conversion rate, nobody really knows. This is kind of what we deciphered over time. You have good conversion rates, they put you as emergent favorite. You have a good velocity of reviews, they put you as category favorite. You have the top rating at the end of the year. They do like yearly winners and stuff like that. They have a bunch of different badges. And some of their competitors that we'll get to in a little bit, they do the same thing. It's a very common thing. Now, I think most of them are copying the model that Capterra is using. But yeah, this is the badges is a thing. We use those on our landing pages as well. We have badges from each one of their websites. So it looks like we're like the top favorite at 3 different websites when it's all basically the same review network, but it helps. It's like social proof on your landing page. All of that stuff helps.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned their competitors to Capterra and the Capterra network, I guess we call it. And I think G2 and SourceForge are a couple
correct.
that you mentioned.
Those are the ones.
Talk to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to us about them. Like, how do they compare? Do you also use them? Is the traffic the same? Are the, is the cost per click the same? Or is it kind of like they're also RANs and just, kind of ignore them if you're starting out?
Well, I think it really depends on your category. You really have to look at the search results and see which website shows up at the top. For us, it's the Capterra network. SourceForge. Well, SourceForge used to be, it still advertises itself as an open source repository, kind of like the GitHub before GitHub was a thing. And most of their traffic is very developer tool oriented. So if you have a company in that space, there's a good chance that SourceForge is at the top of the search results. And then I would definitely invest in it. We did make a small effort to get some reviews. Our category, because SourceForge is not at the top of the search results, there's not a lot of competition there. So just by adding 5 or 6 reviews on SourceForge, we were able to get to the very top of the listing very easily. And we're not paying for clicks. So
really interesting.
Yeah, we do have listings on both G2 and SourceForge, but we're not bidding there. They keep reaching out to us to open a paid account and start bidding. SourceForge always pushes there. Oh, we have millions of visitors a month, but I know most of them are just there to download free open source software. They're not there for the same purpose. G2 is a different story. So G2 is actually doing okay in our vertical, just slightly below Capterra, but I found that dealing with them is extremely painful. Their interface is, I don't know exactly how to put it, but things just don't work. They're just broken all the time. Links don't go anywhere. You try to log in like 5 times, and on the 6th attempt, it does log you in and you get some broken page. And then you try to reach out to their support. All you want to do is to publish your listing. Very hard to get somebody to respond. I don't know. I've had a pretty bad time dealing with G2. And the thing is, they keep reaching out to me. And I'm like, every now and then I try restarting the efforts and I run into the same issues. So I kind of gave up on G2, but I know some companies, especially if they rank at the top spots for search results in your category, some companies are doing very well with G2. So worth looking into if they're the top dog in your search category.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way to think about it. I think the last question for me, and then I'll ask if you have any closing thoughts, is you mentioned that Capterra and GetApp and Software Advice are all under this umbrella. They're owned by Gartner, I think you mentioned.
Yep.
And so in order to have a listing in all 3 and to do pay-per-click in all 3, do I need to sign up to 3 sites? Or if you go to Capterra, does it manage all of that for you in one place?
So it's interesting. I'm not completely sure if they didn't start out as separate websites. I think they actually did. But when I joined, and this is 7 years ago, 2016, they were already being managed from the same umbrella. It wasn't seamless. Sometimes I would have to reach out to our account manager and tell them to push the changes to the other websites because it wasn't updating. By now, it's pretty seamless. You manage everything from Capterra, and everything updates pretty much in real time in all the other websites as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you have any closing thoughts for folks who are getting started with Capterra?
Yeah, my main advice is go to Google and put best XYZ software in your category and see which websites come up. The ones that come up on top, definitely worth investing in creating a listing, start playing around with the bids, and see if it's worth your time, because I think most SaaS companies can acquire very cost-efficient leads through this channel.
Eran, thanks so much for joining me and taking the time to enlighten the MicroConf Remote audience.
Thanks for hosting me, Rod. Looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Folks want to check out what you're doing, they can head to gymdesk.com. All right. Thanks again to Eran for sharing his knowledge on Capterra. It's honestly the first talk I've ever seen on it. I was learning oftentimes when I'm interviewing someone, I'm asking questions I know the answer to. In that one, I never did Capterra advertising. So we do have some really good questions that have come in, and I'll answer them for the next 5, 6, 7 minutes. And then we will dive into our founder by founder, where you get to meet other founders one-on-one. So first question from Anonymous was asked before his talk, but the question is, Capterra didn't have enough traffic in my space, and so their costs were exorbitant for the value. I stepped back from them. Should I reevaluate now that I have more customers and could probably get reviews? Do reviews change the costs? So reviews do, and in the conversation, you heard that there's a bunch of factors that cause you to rank, and reviews are one of them. And so the typical advice that I've seen in the Slacks where I see people discussing this is there's a thing you can kick off in Capterra where you can email people for reviews from Capterra. So you can either do it that way, or as Eran said, when people have a good experience, like a good support experience, or they write in and say, I love this software, you say, that's so amazing. Thanks for being a customer. You know what would really help us out? If you could take 2 minutes and write this review. And that's how people do it. So I do think reviews will help you rank higher for lower cost. But the other part of the question was they didn't have enough traffic in my space. If they don't have enough traffic in your space, then that's probably not worth doing. So I would take Eran's advice. You go into a, an incognito window in your browser, and then you search for best XYZ software, whatever XYZ is for you, and you see who ranks. So maybe Capterra doesn't have enough traffic because they just don't rank high enough. But if G2 or the other tools we talked about during the talk rank higher, then those are the ones to think about targeting. Thanks for that question. The next one is from Water Von Lent. He asks, would Capterra make sense for a product without a dedicated category? My product for WooCommerce monitoring would fit in the website monitoring category, but it is not relevant for a lot of the viewers there. I would say no. I think if you don't have if it doesn't have a dedicated category that's going to be highly relevant and is really specific, I wouldn't spend the time. This would be a lot lower on my list of experiments to run. And frankly, with WooCommerce, the advantage you have is, of course, anywhere, every WooCommerce podcast, YouTube channel, every, obviously the WooCommerce app store, I'd be trying to do crazy app store optimization there to rank. There's a lot of places that you can go focus, but in my opinion, personally, I wouldn't be looking at Capterra. Next question from Will Johnson. Is there a search volume on Google that is too small or too big for Capterra to be a good option? Basically, the size of the niche that it works for. How many reviews do you need to start with? All right, so a couple questions there. First of all, as Eran said at the very end, is like figure out where, Capterra may not be the silver bullet, right? Because G2 or SourceForge or one of these others might outrank them. Or frankly, maybe none of them rank. And it's just a completely different, this is not an approach you can take. I do want to call out, this has worked really well for Eran. I've seen it work really well for a handful of other founders who have tried it. But like any marketing approach, it only works in certain spaces and it only works for certain products. And so I like to say, like my rule of thumb these days is, for example, is like cold email, cold LinkedIn outreach seems to be working for about 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 companies that I see try it. I don't know what that number is for Capterra because I don't have a big enough sample size, but realize that this is amazing if it works, and it just may not work in your space. So to me, it's worth an experiment if you can find a category, But with that said, is there search volume that is too big for Capterra to be a good option? No, not if Capterra ranks high, right? That's great. Is there search volume that is too small for Capterra to be a good option? I would say yes if they don't rank high, and also if it's literally, a trickle of searches, then obviously that's not going to be great. What I have found though is a lot of the tough thing with search volume is we go to these tools that try to estimate it because Google doesn't really tell us. And I've seen some search volume tools and Google's keyword, AdWords tool say, oh, it's like less than 100 per month. And then I've seen those searches have 300, 400, 500 searches a month. And so it's not that it's wrong all the time, but I'm a little wary of that. And then Will's last question was, how many reviews do you need to start with? So I don't know a definitive answer to that. I have definitely seen folks get in the 3 to 5 review range and then start making small bets. And that's what I liked about what Eran said, is he's like, $100 a month they started with. And they were getting $2 clicks, and they were down at 13, 15, and they would get a trickle of people, And so even at that budget, it's pretty interesting. Ivan asked, what's the cost per click on Capterra, and can you scale it? And you heard, at least in Eran, so it depends on the space, right? Like Google AdWords, it just depends on who's bidding. But you heard early on, he was paying 2, and now he's paying, what did he say, 5 to 7, depending on, he's in multiple categories. And so that's his range. I don't know the range for every piece of software, obviously. And then can you scale it? And it sounds like you can scale it to a certain point. Even Capterra only gets so much volume for these, right? And so you can scale it until it runs out of leads, right? Until it runs out of monthly leads. And as he said, I think the big thing to think about is, if you're going to do this, like, try to rank, but rank where your budget allows you. But he's found 6.5 or 7 is the ideal, which is not something I would have guessed, to be honest. So I think that was a really nice question. And then the last question from Gurpreet. There's 2 questions, but actually, yeah, Brian, you asked Eran about how he markets through trade associations, and since he's not here, since that was pre-recorded due to his time zone, I'm not able to answer that, because I don't know how he does that. But last question from Gurpreet before we dive into Founder by Founder is, are you incentivizing customers to review on Capterra, free months, or any rewards? And I am pretty sure he is not. And in fact, I don't know the founders I've seen do this, and I've probably seen, let's say, in the last year, maybe half a dozen to a dozen, in that range. No one. So it's not like I've seen thousands doing it, right? None of them have incentivized. They have said, they've either sent out an email saying, hey, if you love my tool, because I did this for, like, SavvyCal did it, right? So that's what I was about to say. But, like, he just sent out an email and said, if you love the tool, it'd be really great if you could help us out. And he got enough people doing it. And then the other one is, in your support queue, if someone says, this is such a great tool, I love it, you say, you know what would be amazing is if you could help us out, do this. And there's no incentive needed, as far as I have seen. It's a good question, though. Thanks for asking.